Hey guys, Dr. Ann Lewis here. I am a psychologist and own a group practice out of Fishers, Indiana, an eating disorder specialist and addiction specialist, and I do a lot of developmental trauma work. So I am going to talk to you today about something that I personally feel is very interesting, but I think would be a real helpful episode for those of you that struggle with food cravings. So today, what I'm going to address is what our food choices reveal about our emotional state and some of the little tips about what it is that we can do about that. And I'm gonna dive into the fascinating connection between the foods that we crave and the emotions that we experience, and the psychology behind the sudden urges for things like chocolate, salty snacks, comfort foods, breads, pasta. Um, and and I'm curious, have you ever wondered why you crave certain foods at certain times of the year or certain parts of the day? Um, and just for note, you're not alone. We all struggle with this. So for me, and what I like to experience and what it is that I notice about myself is that at the end of the day, I usually go home and I will grab something crunchy and something smooth. I will grab pretzels and a little bit of Laughing Cow cheese. And while this is something that isn't horribly impactful for me currently because I can manage it and have boundaries on it, it really indicates some things about what it is that I struggle with through the day and what it is that I'm needing. Um, so first off, for those of you, just real quick, raise of hands. I know this is on video, but I will raise my hand for this. Those of you that crave sweet, smooth, creamy foods, things like ice cream, um, pudding, things that are actually really sweet, but also very soothing to us to eat. What a lot of us are actually wanting in that situation are comfort and nurturing. It is usually in relationship to having high degrees of stress. And what we're needing more of is we're needing more nurturing in that place. And I want you to think of it like this. So if you have a friend that comes to you and they've had a really, really stressful day at work or a really, really stressful encounter with their partner or with their kids, most of us are not saying to them, hey, sit down, grab a bowl of ice cream, or I'll get you some cookies. Most of us are going to sit down and we're going to want to listen to our friend talk about what is stressing them out. We're going to offer support. We're going to validate their feelings. We might even offer some suggestions, but usually we sit and we listen to them. And how many of us are ending our day and we've had stressful encounters and we need someone simply to hear us out and to nurture us, and we don't even open our mouths to talk about what we've experienced. We simply go to the pantry and we grab that good old friend, or we go to the freezer and we grab ice cream. And so think about what we're needing from what's sweet is we're needing that dopamine rush, which is that neurotransmitter responsible for addiction. It's that feel good neurotransmitter, as well as serotonin. We're needing something in our nervous system that actually helps quiet the stress that we're feeling and that rise of cortisol, that stress hormone. Now, how many of you enjoy filling foods? So these are foods like breads and pastas. They can even be cakes, things that have lots of quantity and lots of, I mean, they're kind of like those foods that we go to in times of comfort, right? But also to foods that tend to fill up our belly. And we feel pretty full after we eat a plate of pasta or we eat a couple slices of cake. What filling foods actually indicate is that we feel either a sense of emptiness or a sense of loneliness. Sometimes also craving filling foods can be boredom, because boredom is also experienced as a sense of emptiness or hollowness inside of us. And so when we're moving towards things like pasta and bread and cake, we're actually wanting more connection and we're wanting something exciting in our life, but we're searching for food. We're grabbing something that doesn't actually fill up that need inside of us. And that cultivates this kind of chronic dysfunction, right? So I get my belly full, but I still feel empty on the inside, because what I'm wanting more of is I'm wanting more connection with other people. I'm wanting more time invested with other people. And we've got to find new ways of actually filling up that emptiness. And what I mean by this, one of the stories that I have is I had a patient recently who came in and she's been working on some of the steps of getting rid of and noticing trigger foods and managing some of the things that are kind of leading her down the path where she's using food for comfort. And the other day she was sitting in front of, I think she was watching an episode of, oh gosh, I think it was a Hallmark movie now that I'm thinking about it, where there was this really lovely interaction between the character, the mom and the daughter, and then the sister and the father. But most importantly, it was between the mom and the daughter. And one of the things that she thought is like she's sitting here and she's watching this movie, and then suddenly she gets up and she goes to grab several slices of bread. She grabs actually a few things to eat, and I said, okay, so what was going on right before the moment that you went to go grab that food? And she said, well, I was just watching this movie. Like, I had a great day, totally fine, lovely movie, really enjoyed it. And I said, well, what in particular was in this movie? And so she kind of explained what was happening in this lovely interaction between this mom and the daughter. And I said, why was that so bothersome for you? Like, what didn't fit well with that? And she kind of hemmed and hawed a bit. And she said, well, I don't know, like it doesn't make any sense to me because I have a good relationship with my mom and we do fun things like that too. And then as she was talking, she said, and she realized mom has been really sick lately. And so we haven't been able to do the things that we typically would do, but she's been sick for a really, really long time. She had this aggravated cough that wouldn't stop. I think she had long COVID, and got bronchitis along the way. And mom was just sick and she was down and out and she wasn't able to sit down and enjoy her mom. And they weren't doing the typical things that they would do every Friday and go hang out. And she also wasn't calling her. And when I asked her we explored a little bit more about why she wasn't even calling her, she said, well, when mom gets really stressed, she struggles to take care of herself. And instead, she takes care of other people. And so I'm really afraid to reach out and say that I'm lonely or I just want to talk to her because I'm afraid then that mom's going to take care of me and it's going to make her sicker. And so what we identified is that in this, her relationship with her mom actually got fractured. And she hadn't been able to call her mom because she was taking responsibility for her mom's feelings and her mom's wellness instead of talking to her about her concerns about mom taking care of herself and still allowing mom to show up for her. And what was interesting about that is, after we talked about it, she actually called her mom up and she said, it was really interesting because I've had this pattern of behavior. I've been coming home every day and I've been eating, lots of rolls. I've baked pretzels and the soft baked pretzels with cheese and all this other stuff. And she goes, and I didn't realize how much I miss my mom. And the moment I got mom on the phone, I was so excited to talk to her that I started tearing up. And I realized that after I ended that phone call and I was able to hear that mom was doing better and she was actually doing things to take care of herself, that I didn't feel a need to actually eat bread the same way that I had been the last several weeks. It was really kind of shocking for her. And so learning how to fill up that emptiness by actually attending to the emptiness and noticing that we're feeling that emptiness is one of the signs. Another thing that I have seen people struggle with in terms of food is the salty, crunchy snacks. Those of us that want to grab the hard pretzels, the potato chips, other things in our pantry. Those are a lot of times the shelf stable stuff. Well, what's really interesting about this is that those foods are actually telling us something really, really important about the emotional state that we're in, because a lot of times when we're grabbing crunchy foods, we're feeling frustrated or angry or annoyed about something, and we're struggling to actually express that. And I want to parallel some things that have happened for a lot of us that many of us aren't aware of. For men and young boys, oftentimes we tell them that they can't be sad and they can't cry and they can't be tearful because that makes them seem feminine. There's a number of words that we use instead of that, but essentially they're acting like a pansy and they need to just suck it up. And so little boys learn very early on that being sad, which is something that we all experience, or crying about something, makes them less of a man. And so a lot of times little boys will grow up to be angry little men because that's about the only thing that they get socially accepted to do, is to be angry. Anger is accepted and aggression is accepted a lot more in men than crying and tearfulness. In the same respect, there are a lot of us that as little girls that we were actually encouraged to never be angry because it wasn't feminine like. Even so much so that when, and I actually had somebody in my office today that talked about this. It's a very interesting phenomenon, but even so much that when women get and learn to be assertive, that women are called bitchy, that we're actually put down for being assertive, for being too masculine or being too upfront. And so girls a lot of time are actually discouraged from having any healthy level of anger or getting anger in healthy ways. And so we tend to stuff that. And when we're stuffing it with food, what's happening now is we're wanting to use our jaw to get out that aggression. And what you think about like that crunch that we experience. And I know other people that will go through 1 or 2 pounds of carrots, and while they get full in their belly, they're still hungry. Now we could argue that yes, maybe they need to eat more fats, or maybe they need some carbs or some protein at that point of time. But when people are constantly grabbing things that are hard and crunchy, it usually indicates that they're having a lot of difficulty expressing anger and frustration. I know one of the things that I grew up with is that when I had a sister who was angry a lot, and she had lots of reasons to be angry, and a lot of things in her own life that were really challenging for her. But when she showed up and she was really big, she would take her anger out on me. And so when I was a little girl, I actually learned that anger was really threatening and scary, and that the only way that anger got expressed is attacking people. And that didn't feel good or healthy to me. And that didn't align with who I was, because I tended to be a really sensitive and quiet kid and somewhat shy. And so as I grew up, I learned actually how to disconnect from my anger and frustration. So I no longer allowed my body to communicate that it needed something from me and that I needed to express something. So anyway, we go to kind of like for me, how I tend to process my day when I'm not being very mindful is I have this long day of taking care of people where I'm not always taking care of myself. And that frustrates me, not because anybody is doing anything wrong, but because I'm struggling to stop long enough and take care of my own needs at that point. And so when I walk in the door and I'm not being very mindful, I'll go ahead and grab some pretzels and I'll chew on those pretzels because I need to actually stop and address the thing that I'm angry about. Now, some of us were actually angry at people in particular. There are a lot of us as wives that are very, very angry at our husbands or our boyfriends, or our partners that we're in relationship with. And this goes back to that assertiveness thing, that if we didn't learn the skill set about talking about what our feelings were and talking about in particular things that make us angry or frustrate us or trigger us, what happens is that for a lot of us is instead we just try to make people around us happy. And we try so hard to ensure that everyone else is okay around us that it actually disables us and we become bitter. And what bitter and resentment is it's a lot about boundary violations. We stop standing up for ourselves. We stop telling people things that really honestly bother us because we don't want to make it bad for them. Or this is a common phrase that I hear, I don't want to hurt their feelings. Or I know that they're really stressed and they didn't really mean that. And so I don't want to make a big deal out of it because, generally they're a really loving partner. Generally, they're really kind to me. I genuinely think that this is just a phase that they're going through. But then what happens is that we're now left with that anger, and that anger then grows into, when we don't manage it, later on bitterness and resentment because we've been biting our tongue for too long. There's another example of a woman that every time that she's shown up in session, she talks about how wonderful her husband is. Like, she goes on and on about all the things that he does for her and all the ways that he shows sacrifice and love for her. And then today, as we, she started with kind of saying how angry she was at her husband and how she was really disgusted by him. And I'm like, man, that's really interesting because you talk about how wonderful he is. Why would you be feeling these strong emotions? Well, we kind of explored this a bit more and we realized that she hasn't been sharing some things along the last several weeks that have been really bothering her that her husband keeps repeating. But in taking responsibility for ourselves, it is actually our job to talk with the people in our lives about the things that hurt us or the things that frustrate us or the things that anger us. Because when we're not doing that, not only are we disempowering ourselves and stomping on our own voice and then turning to food to bring us comfort, but we're also disempowering the people that we're in relationship with. And I want to pause for a second because I want you to think about yourself. Most of us as women care deeply about the people in our lives. And I want you to think about this for a second. If you did something, even unintentionally, that hurt another person's feelings, someone in your life that you loved, that loved you back, one of your kids, your husband, a friend, a coworker, would you want to know that you did something that really bothered them, especially if it was something that you kept doing? Most of us are going to say yes to that, right? And so why would you think that other people in our life who actually love and care for us wouldn't want the same in return? Now, there's another episode that we can have in terms of the delivery and how we can communicate that. But a lot of times what we've got to do is we've got to go to that person and say, hey, I'm really frustrated with this, or I'm really angry about this, or this is really hurting me when you do this. Can we talk more about this? And can we address what's happening here? We've got to learn how to actually express that so that we're not turning to the crunchy things in our life to get that frustration out. Now, for those of you that are like, okay, that's really well and good, but what if I'm somebody who craves all the things? And what if I can eat all those things and I just go to town on pretzels and ice cream and cheese and pudding and all the food? So what if I'm craving salty, sweet, it doesn't stop? Well, I want you to look at a couple of things. What is it that you're craving the most out of all this? Do you start with filling foods that are also really sweet? Are you starting with filling foods like eating through cake, eating through lots of donuts? Those are filling foods, eating through large crumble cookies. All of those things indicate there's a sense of emptiness, a sense of loneliness that you are experiencing, or even boredom. That drive for connection initially, that is a prevailing thing, but it might actually indicate that you have multiple things going on. That not only are you feeling empty and disconnected, but also you're feeling angry. That makes a lot of sense to me, because if I'm feeling empty and disconnected from other people because I'm not sharing that I'm frustrated about something, I am going to experience all those emotions. And then those of us who are like, but then I'm still finishing off with ice cream. Yes, because we still need nurturing. We still need comfort. And again, I want you to think about you as a friend, or you as a wife, or you as a parent. If we have someone in our life that comes to us, and one of our kids comes to us and they're feeling something, we're not going to simply dismiss their feelings and hand them a pint of ice cream. We're not going to simply just say, you know what, I left cake on the counter. Why don't you go ahead and eat that cake downstairs and then tell me if you still want to talk about this? Most of us are going to stop and we're going to address that. Now, we can also have and crave foods for the sake of physical needs. And that is, there's some interesting separations about that too. But if you know that, as an example, that you've had not enough sleep for the week, and you know that you're really tired and you've drank caffeine and you're still really exhausted and all you need is a nap, but now I'm grabbing food, I'm grabbing high processed, high carb, quick energy foods, that is an inappropriate way of addressing that. And a lot of what we've got to do when it comes to managing these foods and the foods that we're craving is we've got to be mindful about what we're doing, but we've also got to check in with what's happening inside of our body. And we've got to get really curious in order to do that. And what I hear from a lot of people is simply, what's wrong with me that I can't stop eating this food, instead of what's happening right before I started doing this, and actually getting really curious about what it is that they are experiencing. We've got to learn how to pause long enough to address, I am tired. I do need to go to bed. I need a nap. I don't need more energy to keep going, because even though that quick carbohydrate boost is going to help with some of that physical tiredness, it's not the appropriate way of managing fatigue. It's a really maladaptive way of managing that fatigue. Okay. So, and I can hear maybe some of you, because I had someone ask me this earlier this month, but what if I just see it and I just want it? Okay. So that's a taste hunger, right? Now, I want to ask you, of the things that you just see and you just want, does that happen all the time? Every single time that you see something that you want it, and then you just go and eat it? I'm going to pause for a second. I really want you to think about this. So for those of us that said yes, all right, what about in grocery stores? What about at your best friend's house? What about in the staff lounge when there are other people there? When you see it, do you just go ahead and eat it? Or do you do something different? For most of us, we just don't eat things randomly off a shelf at the grocery store. Most of us won't eat just 4 or 5 donuts at a break room when there's other people present. Most of us have enough willpower that in that moment we actually make a different choice. And yes, there is some utility of noticing something and going ahead and having it because I can enjoy it. But also we have to create that mindfulness around seeing a food that we want and then determining whether or not I want to eat that food in this moment in time. Do I want to have it just simply because it exists? Because that food can exist in more times than just this moment. We can get more donuts, we can get more cake. This moment can pass us by without us having it. And lots of moments actually pass us by without us having certain foods. When we're at our friend's house, when we're at the grocery store, when we're at a bakery, there's lots of things that look good to us, but we're not always eating it. And so, what I would invite for you, if you're in a place where you're just wanting something physically sweet that you just happen to see in the environment, first step, first, is it something that it's important for me to integrate into my food for the day? It is okay if you like to eat something and it's tasty and that's why you want to actually bring it in. What I invite for you, that could be a part of lunch. And that is healthy for us to do that, ironically. So when we see a donut, we don't have to have it immediately, but I could have it. I could have it as a part of my snack. I could have it as part of my lunch. And that might mean that I accommodate other things, but I get to have it. If it's just simply because it's there and therefore I want it, but I already had a donut, now we're going to have to exercise some of that willpower that you're using already in the grocery store. We're going to have to walk out of the room. We're going to have to just acknowledge to yourself that that's not my food, or I'm not going to feel proud of myself if I eat that because I've already given myself permission. Um, so what I want to kind of point out with this is that a lot of what we've got to do is we've got to practice a pause when we're doing things. So noticing the foods that we tend to gravitate towards is one thing in terms of the emotional state that we are experiencing. But the pause afterward is really, really important, because the pause afterward, what I want to invite you to is, why might I be experiencing this right now? So why might I be feeling empty or alone? What has, over the course of the day or the week, what is my social connections? What do they look like? What do my hobbies look like? What are the ways that I'm investing in taking care of myself? Or if you're feeling angry at someone, what is it or who is it that I'm angry at? And why am I struggling to talk with them about this? What's happening what is it either that I'm afraid of? A lot of us are afraid of disconnection or rejection, or we're afraid that if I share my anger with someone, that they're going to do historically what they've always done and either dismiss me, or they're going to get really defensive. But we need to figure out how to express the anger, not how to be heard through it, but how to express it in a way that we feel good about and connected over. Or if we're needing comfort, how are we slowing down long enough to identify what it is that we're needing comfort over? Do I need comfort because there was something hurtful today? Or am I needing comfort because there's something hard that I'm going through and this is a rough season for me? And leaning into that and really attending to what our needs are in a much more adaptive way. And what I want to invite you to is that in doing this and in this process of just noticing the foods that we're eating and what they communicate to us about what we might be experiencing and getting really curious about that, that we're actually going to move to a place that we're fixing it and instead of staying stuck in these cycles. And what I see with the patients that I work with is that a lot of times when they're in my office and we can pause that moment and even look back on that moment and really explore, they can actually identify pretty quickly what was going on that triggered them into that space of using food for comfort instead of just comforting themselves. If this is helpful, give me a like, follow me, or subscribe for more.